Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Legends of Tomorrow, as well as the latest episode of iZombie. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about the season finale of Legends of Tomorrow, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of iZombie. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is the season finale of Legends of Tomorrow. A great finale with a lot of twists and turns I wasn't expecting. So many different things. For one, the fact is that Mollus's real name is Malice. He's like, my name is Malice, you idiots. And everyone's just like, oh, Malice. It's like, yeah, that sounds better than Mollus. It's like, in the grand scheme of things, it's like, Malice actually makes a lot more sense. But I guess it's one of those things that was like, so passed down during the years, maybe like translations and stuff like that. Obviously, it's like one of those things, like you pass on something to one person, they pass it on and so on and so forth, all the way throughout time. And it's just kind of like, yeah, people just bumbled up the name and it just kind of got stuck as Mollus. But it kind of makes sense with how he reacts. The whole eyes turning red. If you ever play the game Shadow Hearts, it kind of reminds me of that because there's a whole malice system in those video games. I know it's a whole thing. Well, no, really, that's only in the first game. I forgot. Like, no, none of the other Shadow Hearts games. But nevertheless, that's beside the point. But yeah, they try and the legends try and fight him, but unsuccessfully, even with the totems. Everyone's activating their totems. Obviously, Ray couldn't do it last episode, but they're like, oh yeah, using it. But no, it doesn't work. And so Rip sacrificed himself, which he potentially is dead. I don't know if that's for sure. I mean, especially his means of doing it. I mean, to be fair, Malice didn't die, but it's, I guess, because he's like a time demon, so it doesn't really affect him the same way. So Rip could technically still be alive, but kind of like scattered to different parts of, like, maybe pieces of him have been scattered all throughout time or something like that, or he got randomly dumped in a different point in time. Maybe. Either way, I don't know. Which is kind of sad to see everything kind of come this way, but for him, he is kind of happy about it because, he's like, he knows that he's left time and everything in good hands, and he also wants to see his family again, so at least there's like some bittersweet silver lining to it. But I do love that basically they end up going to Salvation and meeting up with Jonah Hex. And it's like, okay, so we need to decide what we need to do. How do we handle this whole, like, Malice situation? It's like, well, like, obviously Nate and Amaya go on a vision trip and find out. It's like, oh, because we were using them wrong, we're supposed to use them together. And I love Nate constantly comparing. It's like, we're supposed to combine it together like Voltron. He says it later on, yeah, like, what? Yeah, we need to make our Voltron. And Sarah's, can you stop calling it? He's like, no, I will not. And I'm like, it's a good explanation. I think most people there can understand the reference. So, but what I love is that in typical Legends fashion, they screw up yet again because they try to make something because they have to all focus, even hearing each other's thoughts. And like Zari's kind of like, oh my god, Jonah Hex, he's actually kind of hot. And along with that, you have like them making a monstrosity, and it's like, oh my god, and then Mick kills it, and then like Amaya's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm putting that miserable thing out of its misery. Holy crap! I was like, of course the Legends weren't going to get this right in the first time. It's just, oh my god. All the while, Ray is helping Dark. And I love that while he's in there, like, Nate was kind of like, Ray, what are you up to? You got Dark in the jump ship, and then Dark, he's like, oh, hey, Nate, which is like, I'm like, really? I love that that's your response. But to be fair, him and Nate are cool, especially after that whole, like, okay, that was it last episode, or the episode before last or whatever, when it was like the fake beating. So it's kind of like, that was so good. So it's like, I guess like the people he's on the team he's on best terms with would be Ray and Nate. So, but basically the plan is to go back in time to right before Nora turns into, the monster. And so what happens is they potentially kill Nora, but it's so that Dark can become the host himself, and sadly he becomes the vessel for Mollus, which I guess that means this is the end for him. This will probably be legitimately the last time we see Dark. And I think it's kind of interesting. It's kind of a conversation I had before. Like, a lot of, like, there are some recurring villains in the whole, like, But main tier villains, you don't really get to see a lot of them. In this particular case, it's nice to see, like, Dark had returned, but this might be the last time we. No, I mean, it's time travel and everything, so it's not 100% out of the realm. But I think this will potentially be the last time we probably see him in this whole Arrowverse situation. Especially because they kind of end him off on a more positive note. I mean, to be fair, it kind of sets time back to the way it was. Like, Nora's supposed to be alive. He isn't. He's supposed to be dead, so I guess this kind of balances it out. And he does one good thing, with his life, I mean, that's all he wanted to do towards the end was to help his little girl. And it's like, I set you down on this path, so he's sacrificing himself for her. So, but it's not just the totem bearers coming together and all of this. It's also, we got Ava, we got Jax coming back, we've got Helen of Troy, and we have Kuasa, which it's interesting because now Kuasa actually dual shares it with Mari. So that's kind of interesting. They're not twins, are they? Like, I don't know if that's ever... No, it's not. I forgot. It's not, because Kuasa is definitely older than Mari. She's the older sibling, but it's like now they share it, which is kind of interesting. I'm like, oh, that's pretty neat. I didn't know you could do that. I guess because they are both rightful bearers to it. And I guess it's like all we know is like she's led a good life because she never went down that path. She never had to meet up with Mollis in the dark, so she's led a good life. So her and Mari do it, which is like, yeah, that's so awesome. So that's pretty nice. And then, like I said, I find out that Jax is married. Helen has returned from Themyscira. Oh no, and also that Jax has a baby. He's a husband and a dad, which I'm wondering who his wife is. I'm wondering, is that something because apparently it's actually been 5 years since the last time we saw Jack in the mid-season finale. Like, it's been, was that the mid-season finale? Yes, it was. So that was pretty interesting. They also go up against Julius Caesar, Blackbeard, and Leif Erikson's sister. Like, they're 3 other villains this season, which is kind of interesting. So that was kind of fascinating. And they're possessed, and it just turns into a full-blown fight with everyone involved. Also, like, major props to, like, Helen, because she was trained on Themyscira by the Amazonians, so I'd assume she's going back there, but I'm wondering what that would potentially mean. Not unless she starts working with, like, I mean, she doesn't really have a place in time, so she might go back to Themyscira. She might end up working with the Time Druid. It could use her help. It might have just been this one-off situation, just like Jax. I'm sure, like, he isn't full-blown adventuring anymore. It's just kind of like, oh, it came through to help his friends at times, so that might be what we have with that situation. Be kind of neat if she stuck around, because not only is she good with a sword, she's really good with a gun, because even Jonah Harris was like, holy shit, what? That's crazy. But like I said, it's just this awesome little moment of just having these characters come together, everyone. It's not as like full-blown superpower, because a lot of people don't have like their totems. Like, the only person you saw really using their powers was Nate and Wally, so that's about it. But everyone else is just kind of going hand to hand, because the totems were taken by Sarah to kind of like stash away. Oh god, there's so much. Okay. And then let's just talk about the elephant in the room. I was like, okay, what is this thing going to be? Their quote unquote Voltron. I was like, what is it going to be? What are they going to choose? Is it going to take on the form of Rip or something? Because even Zari's like, can I get a piece? She's like, oh my god, bad, or oh my god, good. And they're like, oh my god, I can't help but think about it. I'm like, what are they doing? I'm like, what is it going to be? Turns out to be freaking people. I'm like, oh my god, this is happening. Because let's not forget, this is a superhero show too, but it's such a weird superhero show, and I would not have it any other way. It's like, we are literally having a giant Beepo. I love how much that toy has played. It seemed like it was just a nothing thing, and it turns into like such the biggest plot point in multiple episodes. I love it. That turned into that. And then you have the whole situation with it fighting Mollis. So you have this giant toy fighting a demon. And it's like there's wrestling moves. Like it lifts it. Mollis lifts, people up and then falls backwards and slam. It's just like flips and it's like, this is legitimately happening. Holy shit. And then it ends with a bear hug and a grand slam it's like, this is happening. I even love the point, hey, people can't breathe. It's like, dude, like it's a superhero show that this is happening in. It's like I said, they stepped it up this season with the comedy and just the pure weirdness. Because even they had to admit, like, even the Legends were like, yeah, maybe we kind of have to admit, that this is time, like, when we kind of come through, when we kind of screw up, that maybe we screwed up big time by getting Malice released, but they ended up winning. And I love that the fact is because when the totem all worked together, they formed inside of this. So it was legit like Voltron. And the moment the slam happened, it was just a poof of like fur and cotton from inside of it, and you had the legend standing in the middle, like, oh my god, we did it, yeah, we're victorious. It's like, that's how the main antagonist was killed, by a giant magical toy. It's like, you can't, you how can you even possibly come to a conclusion that it would end like that? That's super good. And when it's all said and done, everyone kind of goes their separate ways, minds are being wiped. It was just so good. You have things being good between Ava and Sarah. It's like, because she's like, last time we talked, like, were you serious about what you said? She's like, the whole me loving you thing. She's like, and you see like Ava getting all bashful. So it's like, yeah. It's like, yeah. And it's like, because her and Sarah are kind of like the tough people in the group. It's so interesting to see them kind of like get all like sappy and get all lovey-dovey. It's adorable, and see them kind of being all bashful about it. Obviously the totems get sent with Kuasa, and so Kuasa's keeping them long enough until the next, because I knew they weren't going to keep them. A lot of them were kind of making excuses. It's kind of like Nate's kind of like, I don't really need it, I got my steel powers, and Waz like, I'm a speedster. And then you have Mick being like, nah, I'm too old for jewelry, so that's nice. So I guess we can just assume she's obviously going back with Mari. I want to know how much she's going to tell Mari about this. It's like how much is that going to get told? Like, does Mari know about the whole time travel situation? I don't know. Is she gonna be, I want to know too, like, how much of their lives had changed. Like, obviously Kuwasa's like had a good life, but how much of their personal life, does that mean their mom was in their life because they were able to fight back and save the village, so the village wasn't burned to the ground? So that's what I'm curious about, like, how much of that has changed. Like, that's something we're kind of left open with. I guess it's just kind of up to you to kind of think, like, well, the fact is that they're together, because the whole reason why they got separated was because they didn't have their mom. So I guess she maybe at some point in time moves to America, and so, well, she's a totem bearer, so I feel like, well, not unless it's because it's like, not unless it's something their mom felt like she had to do or something. Also, side note, we're walking away from this episode still not knowing. Well, never mind. Like, let's go, keep going down the list. Obviously, sadly, Amaya does leave. This is her exit. For her, it's like she still has to go back to her time and everything. Like, she's done what she wanted to do too, so everything's kind of worked out. So she, the legends will always be her family, but she has another family that needs her more, so she has to go back to her original time. It's actually kind of interesting because let's not forget, she left the Justice Society in 1942. So, but when she comes back, like, I guess maybe soon after being part of the Justice Society in 1942, she was going to come back home anyway. So maybe that's why. Because I'm like, oh, I thought you would kind of go. But I guess it's like doing what she's done with the Legends. She's kind of served the greater good and stuff like that. So it's like she knows where she's needed the most. And that's something I haven't even thought about either. That's something that hasn't circled back in the storyline either, the Justice Society. I guess it kind of fell apart a little bit after, Rex died and, Amaya was gone. They talked about that later in the season, but still, it's just something that kind of rattled in the back of my mind. Now, going along the same lines, what I was bringing up, it's like, for one, Amaya kept her memories. I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, I was so certain we're going to end this with her memories being taken. So does that mean things play out a little differently? Like, was it just that Amaya was pretending? Might because of that whole, like, time continuity of, like, oh, I know, like, I don't want them to know too much about what's going on, so I have to pretend like I don't know. So maybe that's what that was all about. Because she asked Nate to let her keep her memories, because it's like, if you take away my memories, it'll be the last part of you I get to hold on to. So, and you had Nate kind of saying like, don't turn around when he was walking away. I'm like, oh, that sucks, dude. But it also brings up something else I was thinking too. I was so certain that he was going to be like essentially the baby daddy. Like, it turns out not to be the case. I guess it is a situation. I guess that Kuwasa does know enough at the time, because she was like, oh yeah, that he's not, have to go back, our grandfather. So it's like, no, I was 100% certain Nate was going to be the grandfather. But it's like, no, it turns out Amaya goes back to her village and just ends up with someone else, which is sad in its own right, because it's like, not unless she actually is pregnant and they just never explain that, but it's like, I know I'm focusing on that too much, but that's like literally always been rattling off in my head. Like that's what that's got to be. And I started doubting it more. And then now it seems like that's not the case, but it's a little heartbreaking because it's like, oh, you have to leave the person you truly love behind to go off and be with someone else. And it's like, yeah, so obviously she falls in love with him, but it's almost a situation of like, well, I'm sure she's not rushing it. I'm not like, she's like, oh, I'm just going to be with whoever just so I can make sure. It's like, no, obviously whoever she fell in love with eventually was the person she fell in love with. And that gave her daughter and eventually gave her grandchildren. So I don't know. It's just something to kind of interestingly to think about. We do have Nora being arrested in the end. But Ray gives her a time stone, so I can assume she kind of gets away. So maybe the legends can bump into her at some point in time. Like obviously she's free from malice, she's not the angry girl she was about everything. Like she got to spend time with her dad. I mean, to be fair, they were all being evil and stuff like that, but her dad sacrificed, like her dad just dying off on his own because he's trying to, conquer the world is one thing, but dying to sacrifice his life to save hers, I think that might impact her to kind of go back down the good route. So I don't know. We'll see what Nora potentially, it might be something we never kind of circle back to. Once again, you have to just bring up, nevertheless, I won't bring it up. I've brought it up enough. It's not important. So I'm, like I said, I'd be interested to see if they kind of cross paths with him or with Nora, will the legends and her cross paths in the future or not? And then you have Jonah giving his hat to Zari, and she been like, which I wonder would that be a thing? Like, because the moment they touched hands, I was like, is that something that happens in the comic books or something? Because it seemed like it seemed like I heard music, like the sound cue and music that was kind of playing when they shook hands, they touched hands. It's like, is this like a comic book thing? Like, there's something there between these two characters? I mean, I don't know. So that's pretty neat. How it is literally all handled is at the very end, we have everyone in Aruba. It started in Aruba for Mick. Wasn't that what he was always saying in season 2? Because season 2's finale was like, okay, let's go to Aruba. Obviously, that's where Mick was after the 6 months, like, time skip between season 2's finale and season 3's premiere. He started in Aruba, so it's like he's like, I was only supposed to be the only one here, but now all of you are here. It's like, okay, calm down, we can relax. The Time Bureau's all fixing our mistakes, with the anachronisms, not necessarily our mistakes, so we can relax. And then Gary shows up dressed as Constantine, and you have Constantine himself showing up. So that's pretty neat. Basically, like, yep, Mullet, because I was like, where do you go from here? And it's like, oh yeah, when you open that pathway for Mullet to come, yeah, he wasn't the only thing that was sealed in there. You've let out a lot of beasties. And I'm like, okay, so that's interesting because this season, obviously, we took a more supernatural fantasy route. Well, you kind of dabbled with that already, nonetheless. But I feel like it's interesting because, I feel like next season would be dabbling in that even more because now we're going to be dealing even more monsters. I mean, we have no idea what else was sealed in there. Maybe it's he was kind of in a locked off prison. So I guess maybe other things over the course of everything were locked in that way. Or maybe it was kind of more like a dimensional rift into like a demon universe was open, which a lot of stuff I was curious about because with Amaya being gone and, there being only 5 people a part of the team now. We have Sarah, Ray, Mick, Nate, Zari, and Wally, which that was kind of interesting to me about the whole Wally situation because I wasn't sure. I was like, okay, so is Wally going to go back to the Flash? Is he going to stick around? I mean, there's always potential that he might kind of like scoot over with this kind of being playing. Well, the schedulings of the show, he could still pop up in the Flash. So that's still kind of open. Like there's possibilities for all these characters to still going to pop up in the other shows. But I was wondering about that. I was like, but it seems like this might potentially be Wally's permanent residence because for him, it's probably like, well, they don't really need another speedster around because Barry's there. And like, I got to go down my own path and everything. So that's kind of what they're hinting at. And now potentially more Constantine. Because like I said, we got more Constantine this season. Not a lot, but a little bit more. So I'm wondering like if this was kind of setting up potentially him. Also curious, why the hell was Gary dressed up like Constantine? That was weird. I don't know what that was all about. It's like, I guess he admires Constantine. I mean, it seems like he's been hanging around Constantine. So I guess after he met up with Constantine and they did the whole Dungeons and Dragon game we saw in that last episode he was in. I guess Gary hasn't gone back to the Time Bureau. I guess Sharp is kind of okay with that. Eva's kind of like, yeah, Gary, just do whatever you want to. Just get away from me. Or maybe it's kind of like, the Time Bureau and Constantine have been working together because the supernatural magical demon side of things kind of Constantine's wheelhouse. So I'm very curious to see what they do with this going forward. Also, I wasn't actually paying attention. Did Zari get to keep her totem? I mean, I would assume that no matter what she gets, it is hers. So she might be the only totem bearer we kind of see going forward. I completely wasn't paying attention. I guess she was wearing it. I wasn't really paying that much attention. I guess it's like the other 5 totems, sure, were given to Kuasa. Well, 4 actually, because I'm sure Maya kept hers. So, well, of course she kept hers because like eventually, Kuasa gets it and splits it with more. That's that whole thing. But yeah, because I feel like there's more to tell too. Because like I feel like there's still more about Zari's story too, just because of the whole situation with her storyline, the whole like Argus running things in her time, and I feel like especially it's something I kind of brought up too with where Arrow's heading, because I feel like we're getting Argus more into like Argus has always kind of been like here and there, like never been a big plot point. I feel like necessarily. It's probably major plot points, but it's never been a big, like continuous thing. And Arrow, it's popped in here and there. But I feel like with where Diggle's story is, without going into spoilers for anyone that hasn't caught up with Arrow, like, I feel like that could all be potentially leading to Zari's future. So I'm still curious to see, like, how all the timeline stuff works going forward with all this. I mean, to be fair, at the time we're recording this, I have no idea if this is getting renewed for a 4th season. I'm really hoping so, because I'd love to see what the hell they do with another season. And I hope they kind of keep a lot of this tone that they brought, because I think it's... even amongst superhero shows, this is a unique show all on its own, and I feel like they really stepped it up with this season and like the structure and the way it's been handled. And I think it fits the very like oddball misfit nature that is the Legend. So I'd be so curious to see what they would do with the 4th season. And that is something else too, like. Obviously, like, we've been throwing in other superheroes and stuff like that. Like, what potential superheroes could we see? I mean, it's DC Comics. They could do a lot with that. Like, potentially, what other heroes could we see kind of cross over into the show? Would it just be a Constantine and Wally being complete new additions? Would we be seeing Constantine a lot more next in a potential 4th season? Would it be someone else? Because there are other storylines that haven't been wrapped up, too. Because there's a whole thing with the Hulks, like Hulk Girl and Hawkman. I always stumble on that because when I say Hawkman, I always feel like it's not right, but it is. So it always kind of messes with me. Because their whole situation, I'm already blanking on it. There's the whole, like, it's something I brought up when I was talking about season 1. There's the whole situation about how, like, in some storylines, it's a curse, the reason why they are what they are. In other storylines, it's like they're actually aliens. Like, the Justice League cartoon pulls from the fact is that they're an alien species of bird people. What are they called again? Thanagarians. Do note, I did not know that off the top of my head. I actually had to look it up. But it's like, there's that whole storyline. I don't know if that's something they'll ever swing back to, because that's actually why things kind of went with Vandal Savage the way they did, because it's like, oh yeah, in the future, they get invaded by the Thanagarians. So it's like... That's still a storyline that hasn't been dealt with at all, but that'd be something maybe very later on that they circle back to, maybe not. I don't know. I don't even know if we ever get to see the Hulks again, too, whether they make like a quick reappearance or not. I don't know. Like I said, those are just my random thoughts, like I said. And there's also something else that we never really got 100% an answer for. It's like, obviously, like, I guess it's meant to be left open-ended. It's the whole thing by, like, Rip kept trying to explain himself last episode about the whole Ava situation, which he'll never get to explain it now. But I guess it is supposed to just be left as he's trying to make her feel like she was special, but no, it's just kind of like, you're just one of dozens, essentially. Literally dozens, not even just, being, making an analogy. They're legitimately just being, not analogy, an exaggeration. Stupid, sorry. So I guess that's what that is, because I kept thinking like that there was legitimately more to it. That it's like, no, there's a special reason you're special, this and that. I thought there was more to that, but apparently not. Also curious to see would that turn into anything in the future or not. I mean, I guess it's kind of like, it's part of Ava's story, and it kind of it's settled. So I guess there might not be any more to it. Like, it's just another thing, we just kind of have to wait and see her, so. And now moving on to this week's episode of iZombie, a great episode. So much stuff went down that we gotta break everything down bit by bit. What makes this episode very unique is that there was actually no murder to necessarily solve. It's actually kind of individual stories that it's kind of like, oh, everyone's quote unquote day off, but they're kind of confronting their all different stories. Like, obviously a big focus is Liz's story. I mean, no, I said Liz. Liv's storyline. She ends up eating one of the deceased people from the bus. Nellie, played by Rachel Bloom. The moment the episode, I was like, isn't that Rachel Bloom? Like, obviously, she plays one of the main characters on My Crazy Girlfriend, my ex My Crazy Ex. I've never watched it, but I have heard good things about it, so I just haven't never checked it out yet. But I was like, whoa, because it's one of those things that kind of catches me off guard, because it's like when seeing like Raul Coley like on Supergirl, it's like that same thing because it's like on the same network and stuff like. It's just one of those things, gotta point out actors and stuff like that all the time. But it just was a little surreal. I was like, wait, what? And it's just interesting because she literally had that intro part, but it plays a big role in the episode because obviously Liv is trying to take over Mama Leone's situation, but basically subsequently since she died, her network broke apart because everyone got scared because like no one wants to be a part of this situation because it's like it's one thing. It's that situation of like you want to be helpful, you want to do good, but that disappears the moment you like, oh shit, things just got real. They will hunt us down and they will kill us. Like, yeah, you're doing something a little dangerous, sure, but at the same time, it's like now there's like literal stakes on the line of like, yeah, you could potentially be in trouble, but now they know what Fillmore Graves is willing to do. So a lot of people backed out. So now her group is down to like Levon and 3 others. Interesting, one of which includes a lady played by Melissa O'Neill, which I lost my shit. I was like, that's 2. Also known as Portia from Dark Matter. I was like, which is interesting because she's crossing over from another comic, because Dark Matter is based on the comic book TV show, based on the comic book as well. Nevertheless, I'm all over the place. Nevertheless, I was like, that's so neat. But it's very serendipitous that she ended up eating Nellie's brain because Nellie is very like all about performance. And I love the whole like thing with Johnny Frost. I love that they bring him back so often. Like he's like a once in a while character because the last time we saw him was like the end of season 3's finale. Like that's the last time we saw. But it's like, oh, he's here now because he's running a sexual harassment seminar because of the weird and crazy shit he said about one of his coworkers on live television show. That's interesting. It's like, God, Johnny, it's like almost just like usually you pop up because something's wrong. I mean, there was one time you popped up, but that's just because you were actually just a manifestation, like all in Liv's head. So there was that one situation. But the other times it's just like usually you're in trouble or potentially connected to trouble when something like that happens. But nevertheless, so Liv is trying to step in with being Mama Leone, but being Mama Leone means a lot more than just scratching people, which at the time, I don't think I really understood what her role was when it came. Like, I thought she was just scratching people. I was like, aren't you causing more of an issue? But it's like, no, the people she's helping are people who are sick. So it is kind of like, yeah, you're kind of worsening like the zombie situation. You're making it more mouths to feed, but at the same time, she's helping out people like the best way she can. This is kind of like zombieism is the end-all be-all cure. I am curious though, like, it hasn't come up yet, but like, we do know that cures are in existence. So if you cured those people who had a disease before becoming a zombie, because certain things make it so that like if you actually get cured of your vampirism in some cases, you'll get the same illness you had before, like in some mythology. So I'm curious if the same thing kind of works with like zombies, like if you get unzombied, because that hasn't come up yet that someone had a disease or something before becoming a zombie, so I don't know if that's going to be the case. I mean, we do know the cures are at play. Granted, there's only 15 left, and I don't, that's a whole thing in itself, but ultimately we'll have to wait to see if that I feel like that's going to spiral into the storyline at some other point, but at this point in time, I'm not clear cut on how exactly that will play into it, but nevertheless. So basically, the railroad system was basically built around Mama Leone and all her connections, and Liv is just kind of stepping into this. So it's like, oh, you're not very good at this. You don't have the connection she did. Like the railroad doesn't exist because Mama Leone was the railroad, but because of the acting brain, she kind of plays it up, and then she turns the whole thing into kind of a performance. They need to rescue 5 people that were being brought in, but because one of the people that Mama Leone would go to for this situation bailed out. So it's like those 5 people are stuck in that container in the shipping yard, and like they will die if no one finds them. So the place is heavily guarded, so she turns it to this big performance and everything, like writes dialogue and writes these roles for people. It's so good. Like, oh man, the dude was like, oh yeah, telling her like, oh yeah, good job on like the ad lib and everything. I thought I was under the impression, maybe he is, I don't know, I thought Levon wasn't. Well, like, is everyone else in that group a zombie, or they're humans? Because the whole thing is supposed to be human and zombie connection. So he's in detention. So I assumed everyone there might be a zombie, but there might be some humans like mixed into that as well. I don't know. They never really bothered to explain it, and I think that's kind of the point. Like, this is kind of a revolution, so it's kind of like, it's kind of if you're familiar with Doctor Who, there's a similar storyline of like, oh yeah, which one are you? Like, I forgot the character's name, but it's like there's an alien that took on the form of this lady, and it's like, oh, which one is you? It's like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So, are you the real one or are you that one? It's like, well, we both are the real one. It's that kind of conversation. I think it's like whether we're zombies or humans, we're standing up for this whole situation for both humans and zombies going forward. So it doesn't matter what we are. So it might be kind of treated like that type of thing. So either way. I really appreciate just like every part they were playing and just kind of like, she's like, just them having fun with it and everything. Also appreciated the fact that we had, Rose McIver doing what I get giddy when I know an actor is an American and I know that they're dropping their accent to do their natural accent. I get so giddy because she's up there using her accent. It's like, oh yeah, the security guard is trying to guess. It's like, oh, Australian, New Zealand. It's like I get so giddy because this is actually the first time I've ever actually seen her acting in something using her natural accent. Because everything else I've ever seen her in, whether it be Once Upon a Time, anytime I've ever seen her, it's always been her doing an American accent. So this, like, other than like, oh, I'm Rose McIver and iZombie is up next, something like that, like little preview stuff like that. That's the only time I've ever heard her natural accent. So it was kind of neat hearing that, and obviously, looking a lot like herself too with the blonde hair and everything. I just thought that was kind of neat. And she's all flirty with the security guard. I kind of feel bad for him because he got super yelled at the end. She did say like, I see like, a potential job change for you in the future, a career change. I also appreciate the fact is like, he's like she's like, oh yeah, he's like, oh, Lord of the Rings was filmed there. She's like, oh yeah, I was in the movie. He's like, what? Who are you? I've seen the movie so many times. And he's like losing his shit. It was super good. And luckily they were able to save all 5 people, even reunited a family, and even going as far as calling her Renegade now, because now Liv has set stuff in motion, because Levon is like a filmmaker. That's why he was brought onto this, because now he wanted to take his skills and kind of bring something to it. So that's the whole point of recording all of this. Even if it gets out and like, oh, they potentially die and stuff like that. It's like, no, the point is this has to be made so that everyone can see this. So see the good work that Mama Leone was doing. The fact of the matter is there doesn't have to be this divide between zombies and humans. So, and now Liv's on record doing that. So I'm curious to see what this means. Cause like, obviously like, I mean, this could potentially lead to Liv being killed. Like, no one else knows about this. I'm sure she doesn't tell Clive, just because Clive would be very inclined to stop her. Peyton would too, and same thing for Ravi. I mean, I hope out of anyone major doesn't find out, because obviously that will leave him in a very conflicted situation. Yes, he didn't really do anything with the Mama Leone situation, but it'd be different if it was Liv, because it's Liv. So, but that'd probably be the argument. It's like, really? You won't step in with any other situation, but it's like, oh, because it's me, because we have this history, we know each other, you care about me and all that. Now you want to act, you want to step in the way. Like, because I get the feeling like when it's all said and done, we're probably going to end up like at the very end of this season with that being a possibility, Liv being captured and potentially killed. Like I said, everyone else in her life will try and stop her, so that's why she's going to keep this a secret. So it's going to be interesting seeing her continuing to work as Renegade while also doing her job as a medical examiner, kind of helping on both fronts, helping solve crimes as well as helping, help save people. It's kind of sad because Levon gives her a flash drive that basically has the information of 300 potential people they could help. But currently with things as they are now, the system being as low and as few members are part of it, like they only hurt 3 people. It's like that's hard decision. Like, it was never going to be easy, and Liv didn't expect it to be easy, but it's something that she feels like she has to do. She has to continue what Mama Leone started. Not just for everything that's kind of going down in Seattle, but all the people that need to be helped in general too, So doing some good, putting a little more good in order, and it fits because that's all what literally all Liv has ever done is try to do the right thing. Hence, like all her daily job, eating brains to like solve people's murders and stuff like that. So I thought it was kind of a pretty neat element. And kind of since I was bringing up Major, her and Major aren't on good terms, obviously, because of last episode. Like, Major keeps talking, but you notice it in the conversation, like when he's asking about Ravi, like she keeps dodging the question. So like, like, and she said, oh, make sure you tell your roommate to look after you. And like, she only says like a few words to Major, like obviously because she's still super pissed at him about his involvement with Fillmore Graves and what they did. Because like I said, because it's like, oh, you're a good person, Major, but you sat on the sidelines and didn't do anything. You you weren't vocal, you didn't do this, you just you stood there and didn't do anything, so she's very disappointed in Major in that regard. So, but that's something I kind of brought up in the previous episode, just kind of that even bigger divide that was already kind of set in motion, but they kind of brought it back like, oh yeah, we might disagree on politics and stuff like that, but now that divide's going to become even more divisive because we see the sides divide even more with him, with Fillmore Graves and her being part of essentially the resistance, so. Another aspect to this is Ravi, because Peyton wants to help out the family. One of the members, Denny, he had a dog with him, and that dog belonged to his son, and him and his ex-wife had an argument. He took it, blah, blah, blah. So Peyton wants to get the dog back, but the dude was a heroin addict, so he didn't want to put Liv through that. But Ravi wanted to do what he can to help Peyton, trying to do the right thing. He eats it and turns into heroin addict and stuff like that, and it's almost immediate, which is crazy because you see during the sexual harassment, he's just kind of like, his skin is all messed up and he's just kind of like sickly looking. And Major even points out, he's like, yeah, he even offered to pleasure me for keys, which I think was joking, but there's part of me that's only, it's only 60% of me that kind of thought that might potentially be a joke. So it's like, wow. And I'm curious too, because obviously he ends up going to Donnie and Blaine for drugs. And they're like, oh, so how long have you been drugged? And it's like, oh yeah, very recent. He's like, I saved your life. Now get me some smack. And it's just, you can't help but laugh a little bit. At the same time, it's like in a very fucked up way that's funny. It's that kind of dark comedy to it. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, you shouldn't laugh at, drug addiction, but under the circumstances, it's just, it's a very odd situation of drug addiction, so. I'm surprised too. They didn't say anything the moment Peyton came in. She was offering him a brain tube. They didn't say anything, so they must know about his whole zombie situation. Like, because I'm surprised. I go, whoa, wait, is he a zombie? I don't know. I guess, because his situation is weird. Because the way zombies go about, like, spray tanning and stuff like that, and dyeing their hair is kind of like, well, you wouldn't know that he's a zombie anyway. So I guess it's just kind of like, oh, I guess at some point he got scratched and became a zombie, no longer human. Like, I doubt anyone knows about his little cure thing that he was working on, which he hasn't really replicated for anyone else yet, because he's still, testing on himself, like, the effects and stuff like that, aside from the occasional craving for brains. I do like that he isn't like a full-blown zombie, that he is kind of like borderlining zombie. He's kind of like a hybrid, so it kicks in every once in a while, monthly. It kicks in once a month, but then it kind of like dies back down. So it's just kind of an interesting aspect. Unfortunately, they weren't able to help find the dog, but I think it's kind of nice because we do see that him and Peyton are on good terms again. They are in this relationship. It does seem like we see them making out in the episode. And I think it's nice because we haven't seen Peyton and Ravi being a thing since season 1. Because they never really kicked it off in season 2. Because she was kind of too busy falling for Blaine. And then there was the whole like Ravi and Caddy situation. So it's like there was always something. Like subsequent, like season 1 was the closest she left. Things kind of fell apart. So they haven't really found their way back to each other until now. So it's good. Hopefully nothing stands in their way. To be fair, I was like, well, Robbie's situation is because he has that whole hybrid situation. He isn't contagious, so there's no passing on the zombie stuff. So it's like, because I was just thinking about that. It's like, right, you're making out. It's like, well, you don't have to worry about that. So, which could potentially turn into something too. I guess I could play a role in, because I'm bouncing all over the place, but I do apologize. Obviously, another big part was about Clive, and I'll kind of dive into what I was kind of thinking earlier. In a sense, Clive, during the sexual harassment, like it turns out like, oh yeah, you can be in a relationship in the department. You just have to sign some forms. Dale was like, yeah, I signed one. And then she looks at Clive and Clive admits it. Cause like obviously him and Michelle were going to have plans and stuff like that. I was like, oh wow. So I was like, this really is turning into a thing. But then she was kind of shocked because she found out, oh, you're in a relationship, which obviously he later on explains everything. I was not actually expecting things to kind of turn out the way they did, but she understands. Obviously, but for Michelle, she's like, I'm looking for the real thing. So, which he's like, hey, I wish you the best. He's like, I wish you the best of luck. Sadly for him, he doesn't know that Bosio is over. She was in the other room in the interrogation room, so she overheard that because she now realizes how hard this has been on. Because Clive is so supportive. So either she has always just assumed he's actually been doing his own thing too, while she's been doing her thing, that he's been doing his thing, but sadly probably finding out like, oh, this is kind of new to him and it's still hard, that he loves me, but our situation isn't working out, because she probably feels super guilty because she's like, oh, I've been having fun and all I'm doing is breaking and hurting him. So I'm curious to see what Dale does from here. Either she pulls away from other guys, feels kind of nullifies her needs, making it seem like she still is taking care of her needs while doing that, or ultimately her and Clive might break up. I mean, they've been striving to make sure that their relationship still works. So I don't know. And the thing I was bringing up earlier is potentially that cure situation could play a role in this. We could see Dale potentially getting cured at some point in the season, and that could lead to the relationship becoming good and stronger. Or maybe Clive will end up finding someone else. Maybe we might even have this weird situation where Dale tries to hook Clive up with someone else, and it's just kind of like, ugh. So that's going to be interesting. I'm also curious to see if Michelle plays any bigger role, or is her character literally in this just to be like that? I don't know. It's kind of weird to just introduce a character for like potential, I mean, Liv was the one that was mainly pushing that whole thing before. It wasn't really Clive, but still, I don't know. It is something that he doesn't really like to admit. Like, I don't know whether a lot of people, well, I assume everyone knows him and Dale have a relationship, just don't know about the fact is the whole, like, open relationship, because that other dude was at the end of the hallway. He's like, come in here somewhere private so we can talk about this whole situation, with Michelle. So, I don't know. It's very interesting developments on that front. Like I said, I'm very curious to see what Blasio ultimately ends up doing. Oh, and then finally, I'm completely forgetting to talk about the other element to this episode, and that deals with Blaine. He finally finds out about his dad. I figured as much. It wasn't necessarily the way I thought it would be. Like, I knew he'd go, yeah, Dad. Oh, you're not answering? Well, you've been quiet before when I've been feeding you, so it's no problem. And it's like, well, I'll see you later, Dad. I'm doing so well, doing so good. Goes back to Romero's. Oh, lo and behold, here's my dad with his entire church, which is very cult-like because they repeat the phrase and stand up, even have Donnie being like, okay, that's not creepy. And so, for him, it's like, okay, we're going to come here once a week, and you're going to feed us. And then, are they going to pay? It's like, oh, Angus is like, what? Of course not. Family doesn't pay. And the whole thing pisses Blaine off, especially when he's like, I forgive you, son. It's like, really? You child abusing bastard? You forgive me? And I just love Blaine being like, I will kill you. It's like, you should have killed him when you had the chance, but you just wanted to have this symbolic moment. You wanted to make him suffer and everything. So you just, you had to have things your way. Like, if you had taken care of him from the beginning, you wouldn't be dealing with this situation. Seattle wouldn't be dealing with its situation right now with this whole church thing, because it's slowly going to get stronger and become a big force in this. Like I said, it's like at this point in time, it's like a four-way battle, because you have Fillmore Graves, you have Angus's church, you have Renegade and everything. Like, I'm about to say Liz again, Liv, and Mama Leone's group is all handling, while I also have like the human side of things, like the Dead Enders. Like, this is like a four-way turf war for what's going down in Seattle. Everyone having their different approach on how things should be. You have the Dead Enders being like, nah, bump that, screw zombies. You have Angus's church being like, all for zombies. Fillmore Graves trying to find a balance, while you have Mom and Leone's group finding that balance as well. So it's like, it's actually like polar opposites on that end, and then on this other end, it's like dueling ideals about the same thing, wanting the same thing, but going about it very different ways. And it's just actually fascinating when you break it down. And I think that that's an amazing theme to have for this season, so at least that's how I'm kind of interpreting. Like, maybe that's just me thinking about it too much, because I tend to think about things too much. That's just kind of my cup of tea when it comes to this. But that's kind of how I'm seeing it all. So, like I said, overall, a great episode. I'm very interested to see, where Liv takes this whole Renegade situation going forward, finding that balance, because obviously it's going to get to points where it's going to conflict with her work, on some levels, because, like I said, keeping Clive in the dark as well about some of her advanced, what she's up to and stuff like that. But ultimately, we will have to just wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good